The first time General Vekar saw a human Plan B in action, he nearly called for a full withdrawal. It started on the scorched plains of Dretva Nine, a backwater planet populated mostly by stubborn weeds and even more stubborn insurgents. The Khaari Dominion had spent 8 months trying to pacify the place, but the locals fought with a kind of reckless desperation that baffled Vekar's strategic mind. The Dominion Council decided it was time to bring in external consultants, and in a move that none of the generals fully understood, they hired humans. Specifically, they hired Gregory Sloane. Gregory was introduced to Vekar during the morning briefing inside one of the mobile command stations. The room buzzed with the quiet hum of alien technology, holographic maps hovering in the center. Gregory stood there, arms folded across a battered tactical vest, his face weathered and lined, looking more like a guy who fixed fences than someone who advised interstellar armies. Vekar studied him for a long moment. Gregory stared back, utterly unimpressed. "You are the human strategist," Vekar said, his translator unit humming as it worked. "Guess so," Gregory said. He scratched his jaw, then added, "Greg's fine." Vekar didn't blink, though his aides shifted uncomfortably. "Your world boasts a reputation for creative solutions." Gregory gave a short laugh. "That's one way of putting it." Vekar gestured to the map. "The insurgents have fortified the central ridge. Our forces cannot breach it without unacceptable losses." Gregory squinted at the map. "All right, what's Plan A?" Vekar straightened. "We will advance under cover of ion shields, deploy breach drones, and storm the ridge in a coordinated assault." Gregory nodded slowly. "Solid. Problem is, you're thinking like you're fighting an army. These folks are thinking like they're fighting for their lives, which means they'll blow the ridge before they let you take it." Vekar's aides began murmuring. Vekar silenced them with a hand. "You suggest an alternative?" Gregory smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Yeah, we go with Plan B." Vekar hesitated. "Define Plan B." Gregory dropped his hand onto the table with a heavy slap. Bigger explosions. The room fell deathly silent. Even the holographic map seemed to flicker uncertainly. Vekar leaned forward. "Explain." Gregory pulled a battered notebook from his pocket and started sketching. "You don't take the ridge, you make it irrelevant, blow the valley floor, collapse the whole hill, turn their fortress into a tomb." Vekar stared at the messy lines Gregory drew. "You wish to detonate the entire terrain." "Yup," Gregory said. "That is excessive." Gregory shrugged. "So's losing 1,000 soldiers trying to climb up a death trap." Vekar tapped his claws against the table, thinking, the logistics would be complex. Gregory grinned. "Lucky for you, humans are real good at blowing stuff up." He wasn't wrong. By evening, Gregory was waist-deep in the valley, overseeing the placement of seismic charges. Dominion engineers watched him nervously as he adjusted the arming mechanisms, muttering to himself, "How stable is this plan?" Vekar asked, standing atop an observation platform overlooking the operation. Gregory looked up, squinting against the setting sun. "Stable enough. Might want to stand back a bit when we pop it." Vekar frowned. "Define a bit." "Couple miles," Gregory said casually. Vekar silently recalculated the deployment of his entire forward base. The next morning, Gregory gave the signal. Vekar sat inside a reinforced command shelter, watching through external feeds. Gregory's voice crackled over the comms. "All right, lighting the candle in 3, 2, 1. The explosion was not a single boom. It was a rolling, snarling roar that seemed to tear the sky itself. The valley floor buckled like a sheet of paper. The ridge shifted, groaned, then collapsed in a thunderous cascade of rock and dust. Vekar gripped the arms of his chair as the ground trembled under him. When the dust finally cleared, the ridge was gone. In its place was a sprawling, broken wasteland. Gregory's voice came again, cheerful. "Ridge problem solved." Vekar turned to his aide. "Is he mad?" The aide hesitated. "Possibly." Vekar summoned a transport and ordered Gregory to return immediately. When Gregory stomped into the command shelter, still brushing dust from his sleeves, Vekar rose to meet him. You have destroyed the objective, Vekar said. Gregory looked puzzled. That was the idea. We intended to capture the ridge. Gregory tossed a chunk of shattered rock onto the table. You can still capture it, you just need a shovel. Vekar stared at the stone, then at Gregory. You humans, Vekar said finally, do not think like others. Gregory grinned. That's why you hired us. Vekar gestured for him to sit. Explain your philosophy, thoroughly. Gregory dropped into a chair. All right, first rule of a human plan B, if it doesn't work, B involves more firepower. Doesn't matter if it's a locked door, a battle, or a stubborn coffee machine. You escalate, Vekar said. Exactly, Gregory said. Fast and hard before the enemy figures out what you're doing. Vekar pressed his fingers together. This is reckless, Gregory shrugged. Maybe, but it works. Vekar studied him for a long moment, then he nodded. You will design the next operation. Gregory tapped the table thoughtfully. Got just the thing. Over the next week, Gregory introduced the Khaari forces to a series of increasingly unorthodox tactics. When insurgents fortified a river crossing, Gregory rigged upstream explosives to divert the river entirely, sweeping the fortifications away in a muddy torrent. When enemy snipers pinned down a squad, Gregory strapped mirrors to drones and created a dazzling confusion of reflections, giving the soldiers cover to escape. Each time, Vekar watched, fascinated and horrified. But the moment that cemented Gregory's reputation came during the siege of Fort Vranik. The fort was an ancient structure, reinforced over generations. Heavy plasma cannons lined its walls. Dominion forces had battered it for weeks with no success. Vekar summoned Gregory to the war room. The fort resists all efforts, Vekar said. Gregory studied the schematics. You want Plan B? Vekar hesitated, then nodded. Gregory grinned. All right. Bigger explosion. Vekar's aide leaned forward. The walls are too thick. Gregory tapped the map, not the walls, the foundations. Within hours, Gregory and a team of Dominion engineers were tunneling under the fort. It was dangerous work, and Gregory insisted on being there personally. 3 days later, the charges were ready. Gregory stood at the tunnel mouth, dirty and exhausted, holding the detonator. You sure about this? The lead engineer asked. Gregory wiped sweat from his forehead. Nope, but it's the best bad idea we got. He pressed the button, the ground shuddered, then cracked open. One entire corner of Fort Vranik sagged, then collapsed into the sinkhole Gregory had engineered. Dominion troops stormed the ruins minutes later with minimal resistance. When Gregory limped back into the command shelter, Vekar rose to meet him. You are injured, Vekar said, noting Gregory's limp. Gregory grimaced. Twisted my ankle getting out of the tunnel, nothing broken, got it checked. Vekar nodded. You should rest. Gregory shook his head. Still got work to do. Vekar placed a hand on his shoulder, a rare gesture of respect. You have taught me something today, Greg Sloane. Gregory raised an eyebrow. Yeah, what's that? Vekar's mouth curved in what might have been a Khaari smile. Plan B means bigger explosions. Gregory laughed, winced, and sat down heavily. Now you're getting it. The war for Dretva Nine dragged on, but with Gregory's influence, the Dominion adapted faster than the insurgents could counter. Fortifications were no longer challenges to overcome but opportunities to outthink and outblast. And General Vekar, once a rigid tactician, found himself sketching out his own plan B late into the night. Bigger, louder, and just a little bit crazy. Just like the humans had taught him. 2 days after Fort Vranik crumbled into a man-made sinkhole, Gregory Sloane found himself lying flat on a surgical cot inside the Dominion's mobile triage unit. His ankle, which he had stubbornly ignored, had ballooned to twice its size and turned an alarming shade of purple. General Vekar, whose curiosity about human limits had only deepened, stood at the foot of the cot, arms crossed. You should have reported the injury immediately, Vekar said, his mandibles twitching in what Gregory had learned was the Khaari version of disapproval. Gregory grimaced as the Dominion medic, a thin, 4-armed creature, tightened a splint around his lower leg. I figured if I didn't look at it too hard, it'd fix itself. The medic paused, turning to Vekar in confusion. Is this a human medical doctrine? No, Gregory muttered, squeezing his eyes shut as the splint dug into the swelling. It's called stubbornness. Vekar studied him for a long moment. Your species willingly ignores injury, not willingly, Gregory said, exhaling slowly. Just. We have this thing where if the job needs doing, you get it done first. Deal with the broken parts later. The medic clicked his tongue disapprovingly and adjusted the splint again, wrapping it tight with a flexible polymer band. Gregory flinched but said nothing. You risk permanent damage, the medic said. Gregory opened one eye. If I had a credit for every time someone told me that, I'd own a small moon. Vekar motioned for the medic to continue. Stabilize him, I require his expertise. Gregory chuckled weakly. Aw, you're starting to like me. Vekar ignored the comment. How long until he is mobile? The medic hesitated. With care, he may walk in 3 rotations. Full function will take longer. Gregory sat up carefully. 3 days. I can work with that. You will remain here until cleared, Vekar said. Gregory swung his legs over the side of the cot and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced up his calf, sharp and blinding. Yeah, about that, Gregory said, gripping the edge of the cot. Maybe I'll give it a few hours. Vekar leaned closer. You humans repair yourselves through rest alone, Gregory gave a half shrug. Mostly, sometimes duct tape and a good attitude. The medic looked horrified. Before Vekar could delve deeper into human medical absurdities, a junior officer burst into the tent, breathless. General, the officer said, the insurgents they've taken hostage, Vekar stiffened. When? During the night cycle. They used subterranean tunnels we did not detect. Vekar turned to Gregory. Can you stand? Gregory grinned through the pain. If you've got a chair with wheels, I'm your guy. Without hesitation, Vekar ordered a grav chair brought in. Gregory was strapped into it like a reluctant monarch, and together they sped toward the command tent. Inside, chaos reigned. Holographic maps flickered with red alerts. Officers barked updates to one another in clipped Khaari dialects. Hostage, a critical supply depot, was blinking furiously on the display. Gregory wheeled himself forward. All right, give me the rundown. Vekar pointed to the map. They have fortified the depot. We cannot approach without substantial losses. Their tunnels prevent conventional siege. Gregory tapped his fingers against the armrest. So we can't go under, can't go over. What about around? Vekar frowned. Around, Gregory nodded. Tunnels collapse easy if you hit them right. You don't go through, you make it so going through is impossible, one of the officers spoke up. They have hostages. Gregory's face hardened. Then we don't drop the roof, we smoke them out. Vekar tilted his head. Explain. Gregory leaned forward, the chair creaking under his weight. You vent something non-lethal into the tunnels, something that makes staying in there miserable. Heat, noise, stink, whatever works. Force them topside, Vekar considered. We possess sonic destabilizers. Gregory snapped his fingers. Perfect. Crank them up, tune them to the right frequencies, and those tunnels'll be ringing like a bell. They'll come up begging you to arrest them. Vekar issued rapid orders. Within 20 minutes, teams were positioning destabilizers around hostage. Gregory adjusted his seat to get a better view of the live feed. You're about to see the magic of making people really uncomfortable. Vekar watched intently as the devices powered up. A low hum filled the air, growing steadily more intense. On the monitors, the ground near the depot trembled. Figures began emerging, stumbling, clutching their heads. Gregory pointed. And there's your insurgents. Vekar turned to him. You have weaponized irritation. Gregory grinned. First principle of human conflict resolution. If you can't beat them, annoy them until they quit. Vekar gave a low, contemplative rumble. Effective. Inelegant, but effective. Gregory shifted in his chair, trying to ease the pressure on his ankle. Elegance is for parades. You want results, you get your hands dirty. Hours later, after hostage was secured with minimal casualties, Gregory was back in the triage tent, reluctantly allowing the medic to examine his leg again. The medic removed the splint, frowning. Swelling has reduced marginally. You require more immobility, Gregory grunted. Define immobility. No walking, no exertion, no reckless activities, the medic said firmly. Gregory leaned back. I can promise 2 out of 3. Vekar entered without ceremony, a data tablet in hand. We have a new problem, Vekar said. Gregory tilted his head. Of course we do. What's life without a little chaos? Vekar placed the tablet on Gregory's lap. Our supply lines are being harassed, small mobile units striking and vanishing before we can respond. Gregory scanned the reports. Classic hit and run. They're not trying to win, just bleed you dry, Vekar nodded. We must counter them. Gregory tapped his chin thoughtfully. You ever heard of a honey trap? Vekar looked puzzled. We do not consume honey. Gregory laughed, then winced as his ankle twinged. It's a metaphor. We set up a fake convoy, make it look juicy. They hit it, we spring the trap, Vekar considered. Risky? Gregory raised an eyebrow. You want safe or you want effective? Several Dominion officers gathered around as Gregory outlined the plan. A convoy would be loaded with decoy supplies and lightly guarded on the surface. Hidden beneath would be rapid response teams ready to encircle the attackers. Preparations began immediately. Gregory insisted on overseeing the setup, barking orders from his grav chair like a commander from some ancient Earth War movie. By dusk, the convoy rumbled out across the plains. Gregory sat in the command center, watching the feed. They'll hit it just before full dark. That's when they feel safest. Sure enough, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, blips appeared on the scanners. They're coming, Vekar said quietly. Gregory leaned forward. Patience. Let them commit. The insurgents swarmed the convoy, disabling the lead vehicle. Vekar glanced at Gregory. Now, Gregory shook his head. Give them a minute. Let them get comfortable. Only when the attackers began looting the decoy supplies did Gregory nod. Now, hidden doors on the convoy trucks burst open. Dominion squads poured out, cutting off escape routes with practiced efficiency. Within minutes, the insurgents were disarmed and bound. Vekar turned to Gregory. Your instincts are unsettlingly accurate, Gregory shrugged. Spend enough time fighting dirty, you learn the tricks. The medic reappeared, hands on hips. He must rest, Gregory sighed. Fine, no more field trips tonight. Vekar inclined his head. Your methods are unorthodox, but you achieve victory. Gregory smiled tiredly. You hired humans. What did you expect? Neat and tidy? Vekar gave a low, thoughtful hum. I expected chaos. You delivered something more dangerous. Gregory glanced at the collapsed ridge on the horizon, the secured fortress, the captured insurgents. Yeah, he said softly. Welcome to Plan B. Gregory Sloane woke to the stale antiseptic tang of the triage tent and the low buzz of generators outside. His ankle throbbed, but the swelling had gone down enough that the Dominion medic grudgingly allowed him to hobble short distances on crutches. The medic, whose species name Gregory still couldn't pronounce without gargling gravel, adjusted the support brace with 2 hands while using the other 2 to swipe through a medical scanner. Minimal ligament tearing. Lucky, the medic said, tightening the last strap with a firm tug that made Gregory grunt. Lucky's relative, Gregory muttered, flexing his toes carefully. General Vekar appeared at the tent entrance, ducking slightly to avoid the low frame. His armor bore fresh scratches and the faint scent of scorched metal clung to him. You are ambulatory, Vekar observed, sort of, Gregory said, swinging his good leg off the cot, more like glorified hopping. Vekar gestured toward the exit. Walk with me. Gregory pushed himself upright, balancing awkwardly on the crutches, and limped alongside Vekar into the bright mid-morning glare. The camp bustled with activity. Dominion technicians repaired damaged transports, squads drilled in tight formations, and engineers packed up sonic destabilizers into armored carriers. Vekar led him toward a cluster of portable command shelters at the edge of camp, speaking in low tones. There is a summit scheduled. Representatives from the insurgent factions wish to negotiate terms. Gregory glanced sideways. You think it's legit? Vekar's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. I do not trust it, but the council demands we attend. They entered the largest shelter, where a table had been cleared, and a holographic projector displayed the meeting location, a neutral plateau between Dominion and insurgent territories. Marked only by a battered ancient monument, Gregory leaned on his crutches, studying the map. Open ground. Minimal cover makes it harder for them to spring an ambush. Unless they intend to use the monument itself, Vekar said. Gregory exhaled slowly. It's never simple. Vekar folded his arms. You will accompany me. Gregory rubbed the back of his neck. You sure? I'm not exactly stealthy right now. I require your instincts, Vekar said simply. 3 hours later, they stood atop the plateau, Dominion banners fluttering limply in the dry wind. Gregory shifted his weight on the crutches, eyeing the dozen insurgent delegates approaching from the opposite ridge. They were a ragged assortment, mixed species, patchwork armor, faces lined with exhaustion and distrust. The lead delegate, a wiry creature with mottled skin and a cracked breathing mask, stepped forward. His voice rasped through the translator. We come to discuss cessation. Vekar inclined his head slightly. Speak. The delegate launched into a litany of grievances: Dominion oppression, planetary exploitation, broken promises. Gregory tuned out most of it, focusing instead on the body language. Twitchy hands, shifting eyes, too much tension for a group supposedly seeking peace. He edged closer to Vekar and whispered, They're stalling. Vekar's eyes narrowed. Purpose? Gregory scanned the horizon, waiting for something or someone. As if on cue, a faint rumble echoed across the plateau. Dust plumed in the distance several fast-moving vehicles, kicking up trails as they raced toward the gathering. Vekar's hand dropped to his sidearm. An ambush. Gregory swung his crutch around, pointing. There, flankers coming in. The insurgent delegates broke formation, scattering to the sides as armed reinforcements crested the ridge. Gregory swore under his breath. Classic bait and switch. Vekar barked orders into his comm unit. Dominion troops, hidden among the rocks nearby, revealed themselves, forming a defensive perimeter. The first wave of insurgent skimmers opened fire, plasma bolts sizzling through the air. Gregory hobbled toward a rocky outcrop, dragging himself behind cover as Vekar and his guards returned fire with disciplined bursts. Pinned against the stone, Gregory yanked a compact signal jammer from his belt, a leftover from a failed prototype project he'd salvaged, and flicked it on. The device whined sharply before settling into a low hum. The attacking skimmers veered erratically, their targeting systems disrupted. Vekar glanced over, registering the sudden shift in enemy aim. You're doing, Gregory grinned tightly. Improvised Plan B. Vekar pressed forward, leading a countercharge that drove the insurgents back toward the ridge. Within minutes, the battle shifted. The attackers routed, abandoning their vehicles and disappearing into the scrublands. Silence fell over the plateau. The Dominion soldiers began rounding up the captured delegates with brisk efficiency. Gregory hauled himself upright, leaning heavily on one crutch. Vekar approached, his armor scorched and dented. You anticipated their deception. Not exactly, Gregory said, wiping dust from his forehead. Just figured nobody invites their enemy to a picnic without a backup plan. Vekar tapped the ground thoughtfully with his clawed foot. You expect betrayal as a constant, Gregory shrugged. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Vekar stared at him for a long moment, then turned to his officers. Secure the prisoners. We will interrogate for further plots. Gregory followed slowly, wincing with each step. By late afternoon, back at camp, the mood was cautiously optimistic. Word had spread that the insurgent leadership had been crippled. Supply lines reopened. Casualties minimal. Vekar summoned Gregory to the command shelter once more. The holographic map now displayed clusters of Dominion control spreading steadily across Dretva Nine. You have accomplished much, Vekar said. Gregory dropped into a chair, resting his crutches against the table. Team effort. Vekar leaned forward. I wish to understand. Your people, when faced with overwhelming odds, why do you persist rather than retreat? Gregory considered. Because sometimes retreat isn't an option. Sometimes you dig in, get creative, and refuse to lose, even if the odds are garbage. Vekar tilted his head. You do not fear failure, Gregory laughed, a short, rough sound. Course we do, but fear's just noise, you act anyway. The tent flap rustled as the medic entered, carrying a portable scanner. You were due for examination 1 cycle ago, the medic said, fixing Gregory with a stern look. Gregory groaned but extended his leg. The medic ran the scanner carefully. Healing progressing. But overexertion has delayed full recovery. Gregory grimaced. Figures. You must immobilize the joint for at least 20 rotational cycles, the medic said. Gregory raised an eyebrow. You're telling me to sit still for 20 days, the medic nodded solemnly. Gregory leaned back, throwing an arm over his eyes. That's cruel and unusual punishment. Vekar observed him silently, then said, You have earned respite. Gregory dropped his arm and looked over. Yeah, Vekar inclined his head, the planet is stabilizing. Your presence is no longer immediately required. Gregory exhaled, long and slow. Good, because I'm about one bad landing away from needing a new ankle. The medic made a noise of approval and began preparing a proper immobilization cast. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the camp, Vekar stood beside Gregory's chair. You have altered my understanding of warfare, Vekar said. Gregory grinned tiredly. Happy to help. You have also altered my understanding of humans, Vekar added. Gregory raised an eyebrow. For better or worse, Vekar considered. For more dangerous, Gregory chuckled. Not wrong. The medic finished securing the cast and stepped back, satisfied. Gregory flexed his fingers experimentally. Guess I'm grounded. Vekar extended a hand, not a salute, not a command, but a gesture of respect. Gregory clasped it firmly. Behind them, the camp settled into a steady rhythm of rebuilding, securing, and finally, cautiously hoping, on Dretva Nine the war was over. No grand speeches. No parades. Just the quiet, stubborn work of making broken things whole again. Gregory leaned back in the chair, feeling the weight of exhaustion and victory settle equally on his shoulders. Plan B, he muttered to himself. Always bigger, always messier, but it gets the job done. And for once, there was nothing left to fix.